Welcome to Elementary. I hope you're having a fabulous Monday wherever you are. I am so delighted to be interviewing this guest today. She's going to ask me to join any moment now, and I'm so excited to unpack all these topics that we've picked out. It's going to be like no other, and you're going to love the show. Like I said, I hope you had a great Monday, and I hope your day was just fabulous. Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
Hey. Hi, Jacqueline.
Hello. Thank you so much.
I'm just, I can't see you for some reason.
You can't see me?
You can see me though, right?
I can see you.
Okay, I guess that's important.
We'll just wing it. As long as you can hear me, we're good to go.
All right.
Awesome. Sometimes, technology is great, but sometimes, it happens and we improvise, right? That's just the way life goes. Anyhow, so we'll get started.
Right.
I am so excited for today. Introduce yourself and your Instagram handle.
Hello, everyone. This is Shanta Satiadi. I'm tuning in from Calgary, Alberta. I just first wanted to say thank you, Jacqueline, for the space that you're providing here. I've always wanted to try these live session podcasts, I guess, but never really found the courage or the time, to do it. So shout out to Kimberly Miller. She's a mortgage broker that connected us. So, who recently just added the financial brokering, portfolio to her services. So with our team. So, that's basically a little bit about, myself and kind of how we got connected, but a little bit about the IG handle. I'm excited for today's session. So for people that are tuning in that find value, please follow us on OMAVERICS Leadership Group. That's a little bit about the handle name. It stands for Order of the Mavericks Leadership Group. It's basically a space that I've created, of course, with the help of my personal assistant, to really just track and recognize the growth of our team. It's a team of brokers and entrepreneurs behind the scenes that's just really looking to scale the opportunity that we have, and showing people that, hey, we're alive. We're a group of people that are looking to make a difference and an impact in the financial services industry, and just really making sure that we do a good job, and making sure that the people behind the scenes of this industry are known to be who they are authentically and bringing value to the table. But that's a little bit about our IG handle and where it's coming from.
Perfect. So thank you so much for that. And yes, thank you, Kim. Shout out to you as well. And of course, today we're ripping the Band-Aid off. We're just jumping head first, feet first, whichever way we want to jump in. We're just jumping in and we're doing it. So I know you already kind of started to tell us a little bit about your business, but tell us a little bit more. I know you said you're located in Alberta, right? So tell us a bit about your business, and who can, what it's for, what it stands for, who can join.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, our business is in the financial services industry, right? We're financial brokers. Basically, what a broker is in the financial world is similar to mortgage brokering and real estate brokering. We shop the industry for whatever solution best meets the client's needs, whether it be mortgages, insurance, investments, children's education, estate planning, like saving strategies and concepts. So we're basically this one-stop shop for options, instead of, people going maybe to 5 different professionals when it comes to all these different products, right? We become this one-stop shop. And the value that really provides is it allows us to have a bird's eye view and really look at all the corners of people's needs when it comes to their financial goals, and just really comment on what they could do to free up cash to actually save into the things that they're supposed to save into. So we're on a platform called World Financial Group that allows us to really facilitate companies like lenders, A+ credit rating companies like BMO, Finevo, Dominion Lending Banking for mortgages, insurance companies like IA, CPP, Equitable, Ivari, those guys, investment companies like huge companies like Fidelity, Franklin, Yorkville, IA, TD Asset Management, etc. The list goes on, right? So it really is a platform that allows brokers to plug and play and just not having to put in the upfront capital that traditional agencies would require them to. And it just really allows us to also be or participate in the franchise type model if people were looking to scale past just being an advisor and just really looking to build, a certain number of engines that they can use to basically create that residual income that business owners try to pursue, especially in the business quadrant. So very open to many people when it comes to the opportunity that we have, depending on what they're looking for. So that's a little bit about our platform and what it allows us to do. But yeah, so of course we're expanding, and thank you for allowing us the space to talk about it, Jacqueline. But we're looking for people that are looking to explore their horizons in business and see if the financial industry is something that aligns with what they're looking for.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. So, today we've got like a jam-packed show, and I'm so excited because these are topics I haven't actually talked about before. I want to tell people that we do have a question icon in the comment section. Feel free to show us some love, encourage us, and of course, put your comments or your questions in there, and we'll try to get to it. But we have quite a bit to cover today. So let's start with what's trending. What do you see trending? Can you share your insights from where you are?
Yeah, for sure. A little bit about, trending in terms of mortgages, I guess,
Yes.
Jacqueline?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
so
that's right.
I mean,
All right.
especially when it comes to like home buyers and people that are renewing right now. Right now, there are a lot of renewals that are happening, over like roughly 2 million in 2024. And as everybody knows, rates are high, but that doesn't seem like to be stopping any, people that are looking to buy a home, right? From buying a home either. So it's just one of those things where first you have to understand, especially for our viewers that are really starting to learn about mortgages, and if it is something that they want to pursue, they need to know the different interest rates that are out there, and on top of knowing the responsibilities that comes with buying a house. But the general trend when it comes to mortgages is that people are looking to lock in short-term fixes right now. So when it comes to interest rates, there's a fix and there's a variable, right? So for those that are maybe perhaps newer to those terms, fixes are basically you lock in a rate for a certain amount of term, right? It could be a 2-year, 3-year, 5-year. There can be 1-year terms, and that seems to be the general trend that people are attracted to right now, just because we are seeing kind of a downward trend from the top of the roller coaster. Top of the roller coaster, people have already experienced last quarter of last year. And you are seeing that the rates are starting to come down, but it isn't necessarily something they want to lock in 5-year, a time where they want to lock in a 5-year, just because in a couple of years or in 3 years, the rates can be a little bit more attractive. And, the general behavior of people are that over 60% of consumers out there break, 3 years early into their 5-year contract. And that can, as a consequence, build like a huge penalty for them to pay. So that's the general trend, 2-year, 3-year, but it really comes down to the stability and flexibility that people are looking for. I have seen consumers that are, really banking on that prime rate to come down, but by 2% by the end of 2025. So then they might see a little bit more attraction in even doing a variable, right? So that they have the flexibility to break from it with lower penalties if they needed to. So, just just kind of like to summarize what's happening right now, I would say the more popular choice for many people is the 3-year, just because the 5-year and the 3-year doesn't really have a huge impact on monthly payments when it comes to mortgages. I hope that answers your question, Jacqueline.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next bunch of questions, obviously these are topics that sometimes I get or sometimes people inquire about, and thank you so much for sharing your insight. So when it comes down to baby boomers, how can they ensure they preserve their capital when retiring?
When it comes to that question, preserving their capital, just kind of like to rewind a little bit for our viewers too. Baby boomers are basically the generation that was born between 1946 to 1965, right? So there's about 9 million to 10 million of them in Canada alone. And that makes up about 25% of the Canadian population. And so you'll see that the biggest concern right now for that generation is actually longevity, just because which means that they're going to outlive their savings, right? And so that the question that you ask, how what are ways to preserve their capital? It really comes down to really working with what you have. I wouldn't say it's too late to really figure out how to find ways to get a little bit of growth in the capital that they have, but it starts with really organizing what assets they have, right? So really figuring out, okay, come retirement, what do you want that retirement lifestyle to look at? So us being in the insurance and investment industry, right? Like a lot of questions people have is really understanding what they need to sustain survival, right? And a lot of that survival income will come from government supplements like CPP, OAS, and if they have a little bit of capital that they can convert into something that can give them a fixed income like an annuity to sustain. They just want that, no matter whether they exhaust the capital, they just want that monthly income to be able to pay certain bills that they know that they'll foresee for as long as they live. So that's what we call survival income that you need to organize as a retiree. And then really figuring out outside of that, what kind of lifestyle do you want, to be able to eat out, to travel, provide for emergencies if it so happens. That's where we need to figure out, okay, how much of that would be short-term, mid-term, and long-term objectives. And if it is in the category of short-term, maybe, and they don't plan to use it on a daily yet, or maybe they don't need to tap into it yet, but maybe in the next 2 to 3 years, they can possibly shelter it into something that can give them a little bit of growth, somewhere between 2 to 5% return. And then maybe mid-term, maybe they're looking at something more of a balanced portfolio that they can put that money in that can give them growth and safety, maybe something between 5 to 7%. And if it's long-term, they don't plan to tap into that for another maybe 10, 15 years, they can perhaps be a little bit more aggressive in growing that money with whatever capital they have to kind of supplement whatever they have, right? So it's kind of the idea of figuring out how do I continue to make money work for me if I don't really need it. So I would say those are examples of capital preservation, and it definitely requires some professional advice when it comes to really organizing, what people have and how long it can sustain them for as long as they live.
I see. So with that in mind, what are some key financial strategies? I know you touched on a couple of little things, but what are some key, as people approach that retirement age? Obviously, the best time to invest was 20 years ago. Oh, but the second best time to invest is, now as you think about it,
Beginning
right?
of 2023 would be the second
But
time.
yeah. So, maybe some financial strategies for them as they approach that retirement age.
I would say when it comes to strategies, just kind of like what I said earlier, is just really understanding where your sources of income is coming from, right? And really figuring out, okay, what's my number come retirement, and what am I willing to do, right? To generate and to protect what I have. So it comes down to, again, a lot of it comes down to organizing and really figuring out what how can you further generate income sources, right? So a lot of the times, when we're talking about government supplements, maybe the existing assets that you have, you could potentially use to generate more income in certain ventures. So, for example, outside of maybe government supplements, like I said, CPP, OAS, and maybe even pensions from previous employers, there might be registered accounts that people can utilize to put into certain portfolios to grow it, such as their RSPs, their LIRAs, and other locked-in registered accounts. But basically, that's something that people have to really figure out how to organize together. And for those registered accounts, there might be, it's not something that you can tap into right away, but you really have to learn how to spread out, I guess, what you tap into first to be more tax efficient, because there are things that affect our money, right? It's like inflation and taxes. And so when we talk about tax efficiency, if people were starting to, stack all these income sources in one shot, it might push their tax bracket to a higher tax bracket, closer to 30-40%, as if they were still working, right? And so that's where we talk about spreading out, knowing which accounts you're going to tap into first. And maybe you have a TFSA that you might want to leave to the very end by the time you're 71 years old, because a lot of these registered accounts requires you to start pulling out from them when you're 71. So just really creating, I would say, an organized spreadsheet would be one of them, to figure out, okay, I have pensions, I have OAS, I have CPP, I have, RSPs, I have LIRAs that I might have to start tapping into, and how do I spread it out to minimize that tax bracket? And then the non-taxable vehicles like TFSAs, leave that to the very end is an example of a strategy. In terms of generating income, another might be utilizing your equity, right? Like asset accumulation for those that were able to get ahead, and just really accumulate assets such as real estate properties, or even the infinite banking strategy, using permanent insurance as another tax efficient vehicle to grow money, and tax free, right? People can loan against these assets, and perhaps use that freed up cash to maybe further invest in other investment projects to help them generate more income, maybe another rental property, or maybe paper asset investing that can give them somewhat of growth and still have that safety for maybe about 10 years. Another one that I would say, another one that not many people are very well versed in, is maybe they can use their registered accounts like LIRAs, RRSPs, things that they can't tap into maybe for another 10-15 years, and go into private lending ventures by going through a trust company, for example, and maybe utilize that to help loan money for real estate, that kind of thing, and generate, extra income from that, from the interest that they assign. And I would say the last part, another strategy to that question would be, venturing into entrepreneurial pathways that might be low capital, that might align with what they already know, or something that they can even study, right? Like brokering is a good one as an example for people to tap into with very low maintenance. But yeah, those are just examples of what people can go into, I would say, Jacqueline.
Oh, you mentioned something about what do you call infinite banking? And I know I don't have any, I didn't have any questions about that, but I just wanted you maybe to expand on that. So if anyone is wondering what infinite banking is, just give us a little Coles Note version of it.
It's basically like real estate, but using insurance policies, right? It's kind of like a rich people's secret, because it's really just predominantly like, that kind of strategy is more used for people that actually has money to put into insurance policies and overfund it. But to kind of break it down, you're basically buying a permanent insurance policy, and say you've maxed out your TFSA, the next best thing from a tax efficiency standpoint might be a non-registered account, right? And so when people have this extra money that they want to save and grow tax-free and invest, what people don't know, or not a lot of people know, is permanent insurance policies are a perfect example of where people can, fund money into it and grow it tax free. And what you're essentially doing is kind of like you bought a house, right? Like you bought a house, it already has a certain amount of value. Same thing with an insurance policy. You buy an insurance policy, it has a certain amount of value. And basically the reason why people buy permanent insurance policies, there's two objectives. The first common one is obviously people buy it so that they can fund enough money into it, provided that it's simulated properly, fund enough money into it so that it grows enough investments. So eventually, maybe say after 20 years, they built enough investments so that they can stop paying into this insurance policy and those investments can continue paying for them. But the second objective, which is more of the infinite banking strategy, is for people that in that category where they're looking for ways to save money, because maybe they max out their other vehicles like TFSAs, or maybe they're, buying it for their child because their children can't open a TFSA until they're 18. So what happens is they buy this permanent insurance policy, they put a bunch of money into it, grow it tax-free, and eventually that money is growing tax-free and it builds this cash value. And say by the time people want to tap into it, maybe in their 30s or maybe they're in their retirement age, it would have built enough value where they can actually loan against it, a collateral loan essentially, kind of like when you do a loan against your house or loan against the equity of your home, and then use that cash to invest in other properties without surrendering your asset, without surrendering the death benefit, or without surrendering kind of like your property. One way to tap into a house is to sell it and get the capital from it and use that for whatever, or keep the property and instead loan against it and use that money for other purposes, for whatever it might be. It could be retirement, it could be more investment properties, it could be more paper asset investing. So that's a little bit about, that's why they call it infinite banking. You're essentially borrowing from your own asset.
I see. So what are some things that maybe baby boomers should be leery about, or just be a little cautious about, like some pitfalls perhaps that they should avoid?
Pitfalls are interesting because one of the biggest pitfalls that that particular generation is experiencing right now, Jacqueline, is the fact that they just say, that generation was actually known to be stereotypically good savers, right? Like they didn't have a lot of things to spend on. It wasn't a tap of a card like it is now, right? Their average retirement savings, though, however, is only $55,000 today, right? And that's mostly because they weren't as well versed or educated in growing their money. And one big pitfall that they're experiencing right now is they woke up all of a sudden and realized, hey, why does my 55 grand why is it able to afford me anything anymore? And that's why you'll see a lot of our working class is getting older and older, because a lot of them can't afford to stop working past the age of retirement. You'll see a lot more people working in that age group. And so a pitfall would be just saving and not growing your money. And what people have to understand, like I mentioned earlier, there are things that affect our money, such as inflation and taxes. And whatever you have, if your money, your checkings, your savings, your TFSAs, RRSPs, whatever investment accounts that you have, whatever money that you have laying around somewhere, if it's not beating inflation rate or more, which is about 3 to 4%, if it's not growing at that level, if you can't even find a portfolio growing at that level to beat your your money, then you're actually losing money. Your buying power today will not be the same in the future. So that's why we say, that bucket strategy that I was talking about, outside of your survival income, know what kind of lifestyle income you want. And if it's money kicking around doing nothing, make sure it's growing a little bit, at least to beat inflation. So that's one pitfall for sure. Another pitfall would be, like I said, longevity is the risk, right? So if you plan to use up all your liquid cash and exhaust it for as long as you live, you have to also consider what you plan to leave behind to pay for final expenses like funeral costs, tax dispositions from all your capital gains, right? people don't know that when we pass away, that's usually our highest tax burden, right? Like everything you own pretty much gets appraised as income. So who's paying for all those tax dispositions when it comes to that? Or even like things like, when we pass away, basically majority of our assets goes to court, assuming you have a will, that kind of thing. There's still probate fees, right? Lawyer fees, executor fees, etc. So really just, it comes down to organizing. I know it's kind of getting old, but it comes down to organizing and really making sure that you're well prepared, all your ducks are in a row. That's why when it comes to accumulation and really planning to build wealth, there's other areas that people have to plan for, such as like a proper foundation, right? Things that are in place to make sure that you're protecting your efforts so that all your efforts doesn't just go to waste if there was an emergency or if somebody passes away too early. And that's why we always talk about insurances when it comes to financial planning, right? It's not just a matter of saving. Even if you were saving $1,000 into a TFSA, it's not actually worth anything until how many years later. So what do you have in place to protect your efforts? Like even income protection, such as, critical illness, that kind of stuff. So I would say a pitfall would definitely not planning for those final expenses. And like I kind of rolled into it, but I guess the last one would be income protection, right? I find that the retirees that I work with a lot, Jacqueline, is past the age of 65, they generally like to separate their liquid cash from their emergency pool, right? Because if say you have a retiree that has 200,000 for retirement savings and a critical illness or an emergency like that happens, somebody gets hit by a car, paralysis or even cancer, very common nowadays, especially at the older age, say you had 200,000, that thing is gone, half of that is gone, over 1 to 2 years, right? But how long did it take for people to save for 100,000? Maybe 10 years for many people. So that's why we talk about outside of your day-to-day needs when it comes to your money, right? Every dollar outside of your bills, the money that you're using for your bills, your fixed expenses, etc., should actually be worth more than that dollar. Should be attached to some sort of asset to make sure that things are in place to protect your efforts and continue, and so that you can continue on that pathway of having a proper retirement life.
Wow, that's it looks like we need to book like a whole bunch of shows so you cover all these great topics, don't you think? And
It's a loaded, but personal finance and just even the topic of the decumulation stage, Jacqueline, it's a loaded topic. There's so many, we can even just stay on one corner of it and we can talk all day about it.
And you're a wealth of knowledge. Thank you so much.
Problem, Jacqueline.
With real estate, I know you already talked about this piece in retirement planning, right? Like, what are your thoughts, maybe before I move on to a different topic, for baby boomers? How do they leverage it, like leverage their real estate effectively?
I would say I've run into quite a few retiring individuals that has real estate property, or maybe they have another 10, 15 years to go. It's funny because real estate is just like paper asset investing. It does have a lot to do with the kind of investor profile that you have on how, your risk tolerance, what you're willing to venture into, because everything has some sort of risk, right? And when people talk about leveraging real estate, especially for the baby boomer generation and finding other ways to generate sources of income, know the risks with it, right? And so if you have, when I talk about risk, if you have a property, right, the general trend is to generate income from that property by making it a real estate investment, or a rental of property, right? And so one of the parameters that you have to consider with that is really figuring out, is it marketable, right? Like, do you have, how consistent can you have renters renting it, or maybe turning it into an Airbnb? And that might be like a common way to leverage real estate property, I would say. But you don't actually cash flow from real estate until you're really mortgage free, right? Unless you can turn it into like a very lucrative Airbnb in Vancouver, right? For example. But anyway, but yeah, like in terms of those parameters, that's something that people would have to ask in terms of leveraging it properly. But it is definitely like one of the more fruitful sources of income, I would say, if you consider, if you don't have a problem with, say you still have a mortgage on it, and then you have rental income consistently enough to generate for it to pay for itself while it's building equity. And then again, kind of like that infinite banking strategy that I talked about, when asset builds equity, perhaps later down the road, maybe 10, 15 years from now, you can really capitalize on loaning against that asset that you just that you've established, and use that equity to maybe as an emergency pool for your retirement, or maybe using it again to generate more sources of income, that kind of thing. But that's, I think, definitely one way to leverage real estate, is using, again, the assets that you have, and finding ways for it to pay for itself. If it's already paid off, if you're in that position, then obviously just making sure it's marketable enough for you to be able to generate some rental income from it. And you'll find that those people, those investors, don't have a problem with renting themselves, but owning a property that they're renting out to somebody else, right? So, but yeah, not actually the traditional route for that generation, just because that generation is a little bit more risk adverse. But it is something that you'll find more common now, not just exclusive to the baby boomers, where people would rent their own property and they rent themselves. They just have to make sure it's marketable.
Yeah. And, we can go on about this topic of investments, and I wish more people would just spend, that's my 2 cents worth. I wish more people would spend a little more time understanding what they're buying as investments before, and having a plan, really, because, I've had a couple of instances where people come to me when they want to sell it, and when I ask them what was their plan, they look at me confused, because it's like, plan? You mean you plan? And I'm like, well, if you have an investment, you have to know what what are you planning to do with this? How you plan, so that way you can decide how long before it cash flows, and is it worthwhile? By buying this 2 years ago and now thinking you're, going to cash in, especially in a condo, with the condo market the way it is, it's quite a bit tougher. But I want to ask you some hot topics about immigration, right? And I want to move away from talking about baby boomers and maybe just talk about immigration and the impact, the real estate market, and that impact, the influx of immigration, let's say, and the impact it's having on the real estate and mortgage industry.
I think with in general, I personally believe that immigration and is very healthy for the economy when it comes to fueling growth. However, we are running into a challenge in the real estate market, especially like at least in Calgary that we know, right? Like there's a disruption in the supply chain when it comes to homes, and there's a huge demand for it, and that's really what's racking up the prices of homes, right? Not even that, but like even being able to buy a home within your affordability, the home that you want. People are going through bidding wars, and I think what I would say immigration does to that is it just, I wouldn't say the problem stems from immigration. I would say it, but immigration would definitely add on to why there's a huge demand versus how much inventory we have for homes. But because of that, the higher the demand is, like at the end of the day, and to summarize it, the higher the demand is, and the lower the inventory, that's what's happening, right? It increases. The effect is basically an increase in the real estate market. So that's why, going back to interest rates, you'll find that even if the interest rates are very high, it's not actually stopping people from buying, because they're at that point where they'll just buy anything at this point, right? Just to get a property. And what that does too is it creates this kind of market outlook in the next year or even 6 months, where when interest rates do start to come down, there's some confidence with the interest rates coming down, by the way, just because of the way the economy is going. Like, if the Feds continue the rates, for the rates to stay at this level, it's not sustainable. But yeah, just going back to that, now we have people on the sidelines anticipating the rates to come down with that confidence. And so even more people are gonna jump in when the rates start to come down, and that will, I guess, put more fuel to the fire when it comes to high demand and low supply.
So I think there's two options, right? I mean, they're talking about rates in the Bank of Canada rate, potentially starting to drop in June. And so some people are saying, they haven't announced it, but more than likely, and of course, it's not just going to get slashed. I mean, it's just going to come down incrementally, right? And so people are saying there might be like a couple of different options where people feel like, hey, they're going to cut some more. Let me wait a bit more before I go back into buying. All I know is that out here where we are, small homes, townhomes, small homes, freehold seem to be doing like really well. And I'm also noticing like a lot of, first-time buyers, new immigrants, they've more than likely, I mean, in any other place, like on the other side of North America, real estate is at a premium, right? People live condo style living for the most part, especially if you're in a city. But when, coming to Canada, I think what they want to do is they want to purchase a home without any condo fees. And sometimes I think that's the deterrent too, because not everyone can get to that level to be approved, right? And so I think, in saying that, I would say if you're new, find someone who's going to give you the straight goods and stuff. And especially when it comes down to condos, understanding, like I said, what your plan is, what you plan to do with the property, understanding condos in its entirety, if you're staying away from them without the knowledge, really, and because there's a deal to be had, right, in in the condo market right now. But what are some factors? How does like a mortgage lender, like when lenders assess the financial stability, like of an immigrant borrower?
Well, I would definitely say the general rule that borrowers look at is affordability, right? And it really, not limited to like the people that are newcomers to Canada, but they look at, your credit score, they look at your assets, liabilities, and they look at the purchase price that you're looking at and what kind of down payment you're looking at. So of course, like, I'm not a mortgage specialist, but we work with mortgage lenders and specialists all the time. And that's the general inquiry that we make once we show people how to get from A to B, how to get approved for a property, right? Our job is to kind of do that needs analysis for the client. And that's kind of how we're different. Maybe just, for example, if a client went directly to a bank, right? We'll sit down with the client to find ways to maximize their down payments using home buyer strategies, maybe using tax credits to supplement any emergencies that they forfeited for that down payment. And then the next step is to kind of go to our lenders and say, hey, like my client wants to buy this property. This is the purchase price. The general information that they look at is what's their credit score, right? What are their assets? It could be fixed assets. It could be a car. What are their liquid assets? How much cash do they have? What are their liabilities? and what kind of down payment are they putting down, right? So the interest rates right now, of course, affects the buying power of many people, and how that might really affect maybe immigrants is they're looking at the credit score, right? The credit history. If somebody that's very new to Canada hasn't really established that yet, then that could be a deterring factor on why they might not be able to buy a house, right? And of course, like status in Canada. But yeah, that's those are kind of ways that for newcomers that are looking to buy a house is just really learning to educate themselves, how to educate themselves by going through, professional services like us, and really figuring out, okay, what are the responsibilities that comes with a house? Maybe a townhome or a condo might be more suitable right now, just to be able to give them that peace of mind that they own their own home, and then maybe build equity on that and eventually use that equity to upgrade, for example. But that comes down to proper planning and making sure they're, like buying a home right now is appropriate according to their situation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The thing I'm noticing, more and more people are trying to, I don't want to say live up to the Joneses, but, really kind of live beyond. They have this mindset that it's not just, I don't know if it's a generational thing. I don't know what it is, but they feel like, hey, my friends got into this, and so I should get into something like this. And I think we've gone away from that step by step, progressively moving into, you buy a house, it's your starter, and then you move into something else, and then you move into something else, and it progressively you move into, a bigger, and
Your dream home.
yeah, and then and you build equity, right? And then you sell it, and you do it all over again. But in the meantime, you're building equity at each stage, um, which helps you to get to the end result you're hoping to achieve. But sometimes I find people are like, hey, I want to go there now. And it's almost saying, yeah, you maybe, like, if you can afford it, great, go for it, right? But if there's some way you think, you know, you can still get there, just not today, and you're willing to wait, then that's an option too. But I think for each person, like you get off, you come in, new immigrants, you come in, you get situated, and I feel like it's almost like you need to understand how real estate works here and go through a little planning session so that you can be prepared and to go down that path. What do you think?
Yeah. Um, yeah, definitely. Like, and that's why I think it's really a missed opportunity if people don't do the proper planning at the stages when it comes to like really achieving their goals with anything, right? Especially with real estate. Real estate is a huge responsibility. It's a huge decision. It's a huge liability. But there's benefits that come with it, and really just illustrating like the pros and cons and how suitable it is to you right now, and learning how to take those create those building blocks to eventually reach your goals. Because otherwise, there's something called affording a house is one thing, but maintaining it is another, right? Like a lot of people go into buying a property and then suddenly their house broke, right? So that term really stems from, the demographic that just went into something without really knowing the budgeting requirements once you have a property.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's the important piece, right? Um, as the saying goes, if you can't afford that home without having someone rent your basement, then you can't afford the home, right? Like if you need someone to rent your
Yeah,
basement in order to make your payment, then you can't afford the home.
right.
And I say to people, be able to afford that home on your own, and the rental income will be a bonus if you decide to go down that path, right?
Exactly.
And you know, um, I could keep talking to you all evening long, but we have to wrap up. And but I want to invite you back for another
Oh, that
session.
would
I think
be that
estate
would be
planning or
interesting.
something to that effect would be really a good topic
Yeah,
for
that
us
would be a
to
good topic.
really dive deep on. But before we go, I mean, I want to thank you for your time. this is an amazing show, and you did so amazing for your.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, I'm not a social media person, so even mounting my phone and making sure it doesn't follow is kind of like a challenge for me. But yeah, no, I would love to be back. I would love to be back. I think like financial literacy is a topic that people are starting to realize is more um it would be crazy not to learn about money, I guess, put it this way, just during these times, especially during these times. And that's what we do, right? Paying that information forward to everybody because this should be public knowledge, just the fundamentals and learning how to get ahead, Jacqueline. It's not rocket science. It's just a matter of being aware of your options and really knowing the fundamentals of money. And it starts with that, right?
Thank you so much, Shanta. Thank you so much for coming on the show
Absolutely.
and for spending your evening with me. Before we wrap up, is this anything you want to just add? Something I may have not asked you that you think would be good for people to know?
Yeah. I mean, I think, the more like this is a great space, I think, for our viewers to really learn a little bit about, or at least like disturb and intrigue them to get those gears moving when it comes to information and just really learning that there are professional services like us, like our group. So if anybody wanted to learn more about it, they can directly message me on the IG handle there, OMAVERICS Leadership Group, and we can always set a session and just to kind of, do a sales pitch really quickly, Jacqueline. Like our services are free. The consultations to teach somebody from what they're currently doing to what they could be doing, it's all free. So as a broker, right, the different companies that we work with, whoever we work with, whether it be a lender, insurance, investment company, estate company, estate planning company, they're the ones that pay us for bringing them business. But really how we work is we're basically private financial assistance for people for free, right? We don't promise anybody a solution, but we at least try. And so that's the difference between us and maybe the traditional financial services industry. The added value that we bring to the table with strategies and concepts and leading our services with education and needs-based approaches is what separates us from the industry. So we don't bite. So feel free to message us. If you ever have a question, we're more than willing to help and answer it.
So how can people reach you other than
They can
Instagram?
other
How
than
can they reach you?
Instagram, they can email me or call me. So they can reach me. I guess it starts with advertisement through word of mouth, right? So if they wanted to get a hold of me, they can directly message me and I can give them my contact and we can, create that meeting on the sidelines.
Sounds great. So for those of you who watch every Monday or are new to the channel, I thank you for your time. I mean, it was a long show and I appreciate your time with us today. So thank you so much for spending your dinner hour with us. My name is Jacqueline Watson and I'm a realtor with Sutton Group Tower in Toronto. And thank you so much for spending your time with me and Maverick Group, Leadership Group. And Shanta, right?
Thanks, Jackie. Yes,
Yes,
that's
thank you
right.
so much. And until next time, we'll see you then.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.